Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the first episode of Revert with Me the series. The episode begins with a beautiful young woman who recalls something she once heard. Our favorite songs hold a secret to someone. She relates this to a song she wrote 7 years ago. At the time, she didn't understand why, but as she wrote it, she felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness and longing for someone. Only now does she realize who that person was, and it makes her long to meet them again. The story then shifts to 7 years earlier when Cleo was in middle school. She visited a friend's house to record a video of herself singing. Her friend, impressed by Cleo's beautiful voice, suggested posting the video on social media. They also asked why Cleo's songs always seemed so melancholic. Was she singing for someone special? Cleo simply replied that she wrote the song for fun, but admitted that while writing it, she had an odd feeling, as if she were searching for something lost. She didn't know why she felt that way. Her friend eventually uploaded the video to YouTube despite Cleo's reluctance. That evening, Cleo's mother texted, urging her to come home as it was getting late. She hurriedly said, "Goodbye," and left. As she entered the elevator, a man stepped forward as if to join her, but upon seeing her face, he suddenly turned and walked away. This left Cleo with a strange feeling, but she brushed it off and continued home. At home, her parents were deeply worried because she was out so late. Her mother called again, insisting that she return immediately. On her way back, Cleo joyfully listened to her own song, unaware of what was about to happen. As she crossed the street, a car suddenly struck her, leaving her gravely injured. She was rushed to the hospital. The doctor informed Cleo's parents that her injuries were severe. One of her arms had to be amputated, and both her head and liver had suffered serious damage. She would need to stay in the hospital for an extended period for observation. When Cleo regained consciousness, she tried to move but was met with unbearable pain. The doctor approached, asking about her discomfort, and she described the pain she felt throughout her body. Then, a sharp, excruciating sensation radiated from her arm. Instinctively, she looked down, and was met with a horrifying sight. Her arm was gone. Overcome with shock, she desperately questioned the doctor and her mother. The doctor calmly explained everything, but the reality was too much for her to bear. Cleo broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to accept what had happened. Seeing her distress, her father spoke sternly, telling her she had to accept the truth. She was now disabled. Then, without another word, he walked out of the room. Her parents began arguing, her mother accusing her father of being too harsh, while he blamed Cleo for disobeying him, staying out late, and ultimately bringing this tragedy upon herself. Watching her parents fight, Cleo's heart ached even more. She felt utterly broken, drowning in grief and pain. As night fell and her parents returned home, Cleo remained alone in the hospital. She tried to reach for a glass of water but found herself unable to do so. Suddenly, a beautiful doctor walked in and assisted her. Cleo winced in pain and told the doctor that her arm hurt terribly. The doctor gently examined her, searching for the source of her pain. When the doctor touched Cleo's injured arm, a sharp, unbearable pain shot through her body. Sensing her distress, the doctor asked her to close her eyes and handed her a mirror. As Cleo opened her eyes and saw her reflection, she was overwhelmed with shock and disbelief. Her lower arm was missing. The doctor spoke softly, "Look at yourself in the mirror and tell me where it hurts. If you feel pain anywhere, let me know." The moment the doctor touched her, Cleo cried out in agony. However, when the doctor touched the lower part of her arm, she felt nothing at all. "That's right," the doctor said gently. "You shouldn't feel my touch because you have lost your arm from the elbow down." Tears welled up in Cleo's eyes. The doctor, sensing her emotional turmoil, tried to comfort her. "The world is not as cruel to you as you think," the doctor said softly. "Remember, there are still people who love and care about you." Hearing those words brought Cleo a small sense of relief. She glanced at the doctor's name tag, Dr. Ko Mesa. "Thank you, Dr. Mesa," she whispered. The doctor smiled and told her to get some rest before quietly leaving the room. The next morning, Cleo waited for someone to visit her, but no one came. Feeling lonely, she called her mother. "I'm sorry, Cleo," her mother said. "I can't come today. Your father has to take your brother to fix his sophomore project, and I need to take care of the shop." Tears streamed down Cleo's face. She felt abandoned and heartbroken. Her mind drifted back to her childhood. Her parents had never truly paid attention to her. They always prioritized her younger brother, leaving her alone time and time again. They never picked her up from school, always sending someone else instead. Cleo had always felt like an afterthought in their lives. As she was still on the call, she overheard her parents arguing. Her father, angry and frustrated, started blaming her. The words stung deep. Unable to bear it, Cleo ended the call and sobbed quietly in her hospital bed. That night, in the stillness of the hospital, Cleo slipped out of her room and made her way to the rooftop. She stood on the edge, staring down at the world below, contemplating ending it all. Her father's harsh words echoed in her mind, intensifying her pain. As she stood there, crying uncontrollably, a security guard spotted her and immediately alerted the medical staff. Several doctors rushed to the rooftop, pleading with her to step back, but she refused. She cried even harder, inching closer to the edge. Then, suddenly, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. She turned and saw Dr. Kayomisa. "Please," Dr. Kayomisa said gently. "Stop thinking about all the painful things." Cleo shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No one understands me," she whispered. "You're right," Dr. Kayomisa replied. "I might not fully understand your pain, but I'm here to listen. If no one else will, I will." Dr. Kayomisa stepped closer, trying to convince Cleo to come down. But Cleo's emotions only grew stronger. "Don't you regret not singing anymore?" Dr. Kayomisa asked suddenly. "Right now, there are people waiting to hear your voice. Your songs could help others through their own pain, just as you need comfort now." Cleo's sobs quieted as she listened. "Remember what I told you," Dr. Kayomisa continued. "The world may seem cruel, but there are still people who love you, and I will prove that to you." Dr. Kayomisa reached out a hand toward Cleo. Overcome with emotion, Cleo hesitated before reaching out in return, but in her unsteady state, she lost her balance and fell. Without thinking, Dr. Kayomisa leaped after her. The moment their hands touched, everything around them blurred, and time itself seemed to rewind. Suddenly, Cleo found herself back in the moment of the accident, the day she lost her arm. She was on the escalator, frozen in fear, but when she looked down, her arm was whole again. As the scene played out exactly as before, she saw the same man from that day. Her phone rang. It was her mother, telling her to come home. Terrified, she hesitated at the street where the accident had happened. She was about to cross when suddenly, someone grabbed her arm, pulling her back just as a speeding car rushed past. Cleo turned and saw Dr. Kayomisa once again. They locked eyes, and Dr. Kayomisa, holding her hand firmly, guided her across the street. Cleo was overwhelmed with emotions, shock, confusion, and relief. "Dr. Mesa, what's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Mesa looked at her and said, "From now on, please stop hurting yourself and take care of yourself." With those final words, Dr. Mesa turned and walked away, leaving Cleo standing there, full of unanswered questions. Stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.